Hi, it's Fred Dodson, and the rare vintage book we'll be talking about today is called The Anatomy of Biomagnetism, published in 1974, the year I was born. I think that counts as vintage. It's more of a pamphlet than a book, but it's fascinating as it contains some of the original research into the healing powers of magnets, a power that has been exploited nowadays by all kinds of scam artists, actually, who don't know how it actually works and how it's actually done. And they just sell their magnetic wares on Etsy and on Amazon and so forth. But this book or pamphlet actually shows you how it's done. There's a nice little picture on the back showing a bipolar bar magnet with a north pole spinning to the left and a south pole spinning to the right. And the south pole of a magnet generally has positive growth qualities, and the north pole generally degenerating and extracting or negative, so-called negative qualities, but both poles are useful in healing. So if there's something you want to get rid of, such as pain, you use the north pole. If there's something you'd like to strengthen, make stronger, you use the south pole. Something you want to get rid of, you use the negative left spin. Something you want to strengthen, you use the positive right spin. So let's read a few excerpts. This fascinating pamphlet, page 13. The reactions from the applications of the two poles of a magnet to living systems, including seeds. The first reactions of the living systems to the force fields of a magnet, its two poles, resulted in the findings that when seeds were placed in the south pole of a magnet for several hours, from 6 to 81 hours to 200 hours, then planted, they presented an improved growth result, hardier plant, and better yield of products, as in the case of vegetable seeds. While if we were to use the north pole of the magnet to treat the seeds, they developed into thin, tall plants, poor vegetables when grown to maturity, and while in the stages of primary growth, this was noted in comparing the plants with the same seeds planted without treatment of the magnet's pole energies. The untreated seeds and plants then acted to serve us as controls, untreated seeds and plant results. In laboratory analysis examinations of the vital life support biochemicals of the leaves, stems, and the end product, the vegetables themselves, we found that the protein, sugars, oils, etc. were higher in the seed plants treated with the south pole of the magnet than the untreated or control plant products. The analysis ran on plants and their products grown from seeds treated with the north pole of the magnet were lower in vital life, biochemicals, and the food products results were lower in protein, sugars, oils than the untreated seed plants or control plants. The untreated seed plants then acted as a guide to go by in comparing the end results of these experiments that took several years part-time to conduct. The results in treating sugar beets with the South Pole energies resulted in a greater production of natural sugars, and treating peanuts with the South Pole produced more natural peanut oils and protein contents. Not content with these findings, we then turned our research to small creatures such as earthworms. It was found that when the worms were treated by exposing them to the South Pole energy after the birth of their young, the baby worms grew larger and stronger than the untreated control worms that were used as a measuring stick, a guide, to compare this experiment's results. Hundreds of tests were run, and the results were the same as the treating of seeds to the two poles of the magnet. Since earthworms are 90% protein as an average, this protein, when tested, presented further evidence of the effects of the south or positive energy of the magnet to the marked increase of protein from the common earthworms and their biological protein structures. The same pattern of research was then undertaken to larger creatures as the mouse and the rat families. Again, the South Pole positive reacting results were noted in larger, healthier rodents and their offsprings. Following these research experiments that took parts of a number of years to examine, the results of the magnetic field's exposure, the linear effects and results presented the proof that the right-hand spin of electrons as provided by the south pole of a magnet did indeed increase the overall vital life forces and the biochemical strength of all animals it was applied to. While the North Pole energies, when directed to the system, acted to arrest life, slow the development of life systems, maturity growth, and development of all life systems so exposed to the negative electronic field of the North Pole of the magnet. And then after the initial research on seeds and mice and rats, they went on to research cancer in animals. And I'll skip most of this and just read this one part. So, to cancer, they applied not the positive, the growth supporting south pole, but the negative, the destroying north pole. And in this sense, you see that the north also has its purpose and its benefit. Cancer types have been arrested by the application of the negative energy of the North Pole of a 1,800 to 3,500 Gauss unit magnet's pole. The term Gauss is the unit of magnetism, as is the term volt as a means of measuring voltage. After obtaining a transplant growth development of transplanted cancer and the forming of cancer cell destruction, the forming of cancer tumors, it was then possible, after a time had passed, to allow noticeable growth and development of the cancer, to arrest its growth and development to a point where the animal's body took over and the normal cells were again produced in amounts needed to overcome the loss of the cells by the cancer's destructive breaking down of normal cells, as is the reason why cancer is formed in the first place. Not the cause, but the effects on cells. At the bottom, we read, infection caused by bacteria. This is one of the most important research findings and one that should be considered and kept in mind during all research applications of the biomagnet. In any case, where we find infection, pus, discharge, any form of infection, the south pole of the magnet should never be used. We should always keep foremost in mind that the South Pole is the biomagnet that encourages life. All life forms, and this includes living, invading bacteria, germs, cultures, as they too would be encouraged, thus making the infection far worse than it normally may be found to exist. should the South Pole be used? If the research of biomagnetics is to be applied to infection, control, or arrest, only the North Pole of the biomagnet should be used, as the North Pole of the biomagnet arrests, slows, controls many forms of invading life forms, diseases, swellings, and pain. The fact to remember is that the South Pole's life-giving effects cannot tell the difference between invading life forms and normal tissue. Therefore, you must always investigate this before using the South Pole's life-giving and life support energies to a research subject or condition. The book is 55 pages. It goes on to list experiments on all kinds of body parts and on various ailments and sexuality and so forth. That's the Anatomy of Biomagnetism. Now, I personally have not used magnets for healing because I don't have any ailments, and you know my healing methods. However, I've heard from students of mine, from fellow researchers, that they've used magnets with great success. And that's why I thought it's a good time to share about it in the context of another vintage book reading. Now, here's a pro tip. You can look up biomagnetism or biomagnets, and you get a lot of them on Etsy, but they're all overpriced because they use the word biomagnetism, but it's actually really just magnets. You could buy any cheap, normal science magnet, if it's bipolar, with a south and north end, a bar magnet, and it would do the trick. If it has enough strength, it would do the trick. And you can experiment, like if you have a headache or something, or a pain somewhere, you could experiment with applying the magnet to that spot. Remember, if it's something negative, you'd apply the North Pole, the left spinning pole. And if it's positive, if you want to strengthen something in your body, you'd apply the South Pole. It can be as simple as that. You don't need all of these super fancy, there's magnetic therapy devices. They cost thousands of dollars. And that could certainly be helpful in a clinic setting where you treat more serious issues. But I believe, and I've actually seen, a simple magnet deliver results. A simple $10 magnet. If this presentation was interesting to you, please share it far and wide.